What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Orange County. This is season 19, and I think this is episode 11. I think so. I could be wrong. Okay? Gretchen. Girl. You and Tamra might be the same. Might be. Okay? But let's get into this review. So y'all know sometimes before we get in to the review, we get a little spicy just a little bit. And I just have three things I want to talk to y'all about. So first up, I did do a standalone spicy corner. So if you're interested in that, please check the description box below. The link will be there. I'll put the thumbnail on the screen. I talked about Gretchen being on Watch What Happens Live, as well as Tamra answering a bunch of questions from fans, and her response to things were kind of interesting. It also allowed me to see how, the fan base is gauging Miss Gretchen and the rest of the castmates. But if you want to know my thoughts about it, please look in the description box below. All right. So the second thing I want to get into is Tamara basically saying that she's going to sue Gretchen and Gretchen responding to that. So in one of the questions in which I talked about in the Spicy Corner standalone video, a person basically said this, where they were like, are you allowed to sue a cast member or a friend of for defamation? Tamara responded by saying, let's just say I have a meeting with my attorney on Monday. So Gretchen took a screenshot from Bravo Snarkside's page, posted this in her Insta story. Then she put, click here to read all the articles about this. And basically it was a link from a page called All About the Truth, where they posted an article back in 2017, August the 27th, 2017 to be exact, where it said this, hashtag RHOC star Tamra Judge blames sexual trias rumors on Vicki Gunvalson. So then Gretchen posted, notice the date, and she also said, so then is she going to sue Vicki and All About the Truth for putting this out there in 2007? So then another part of Gretchen's Insta story were her posting another article, or maybe the same article, that is also talking about the rumor that specifically Slade, well, no, she brought it up too. Her and Slade brought up in this episode. And it's another article from All About the Truth. And it says this, exclusive, Tamra Judge trying to block secret audio of blowjob with Jeff Timpson, studio owner speaks out. And then in the corner, she also has like, click here to go to this article. But she says this, where she says, this has been circulating for years. I wasn't the first person to bring this up. Sorry, nice try. So here's the thing. Do I think Slade and Gretchen should have brought this up? No, because now they look bad. And I'm going to talk about that more in the review. I did talk about that a little bit in my Spicy Corner, the standalone, so check that out too. But yeah, it wasn't a smart move, but I can see Gretchen and Slade's like reasoning, especially combating Tamra being like, look, I tried to confront you earlier in this season about, calling Slade a deadbeat and how that's been making his life hard. Tamara's response to that was like, I didn't make it up. It was in the press. So Gretchen is saying the same thing. I didn't make this up. It was in the press. So it's like, we one for one. You know what I mean? So I get where Gretchen is coming from with these statements. So the third thing I want to talk about is the actual article. So shouts out to Bravo Snarkside because they posted it. So let's get into it. So it says this, the Real Housewives of Orange County star Tamra Judge storyline for season 12. The 49-year-old reality diva denies previous reports, but has been seemingly hush-hush about addressing new accusations pertaining to a sexual trias capture on secret audio. Instead of issuing a statement, the OC gym owner responded to fans' comments on her Instagram. One fan asked, I'm guessing the rumors we've been hearing are not true. And so Tamara responded to this person by saying, nope, that was the work of Vicki trying to make me look bad. Tamara responded. As reported, a former acquaintance of Tamra Judge spoke with allabouthetruth.com about a sexual encounter Tamra had with boy banner Jeff Timpson during her relationship with Eddie Judge. Tamra, armed with this knowledge, is well aware of her co-star Vicki Gunvalson and is well aware that her co-star Vicky Gunvalson is not the source of allabouthetruth.com story. However, Tamra is strategically incriminating arch nemesis Gunvalson instead of confronting other sources, the studio owner. So then it continues on by saying this. Again, when another fan fingered Vicky for the rumor, Tamra co-signed the judgment. The viewer posted, I learned this year I'm just better off without some people. I'm sad that you don't have Heather to bounce off of this year. Vicky is not worth it. Details continue to emerge about her alleged romance with 98 Degrees boy banner Jeff Timpson, and the tea is hot. Newly exposed text collided with Tamra's own Twitter timeline, adding more evidence to support the tawdry 2010 hookup. And then I want to read what Bravo Snarkside posted in the caption. Okay, here it is. So this is what Bravo Snarkside said. So Tamra wants to take legal action over this circa 2017 story. I remember this. She already blamed Vicky for leaking it back then. In the audio I've heard was just her singing badly and using the R word. But I doubt anyone would publish that full audio. At least I hope not. But it has been publicly available for years. What are we doing, RHOC? First Naked Wasted, which Tamra brought up, and now this. It was so long ago, I don't even remember if I believe this story. This show is cooked. Now, I don't believe that the show is cooked. I feel like a lot of people are just being overly dramatic because they feel like this hasn't been a great season. And since I want to say season 16 to season 18, the seasons have been amazing. And now everyone's like, oh my gosh, this show is cooked. When it's like, there are other shows, specifically Housewives shows, that have had not so great seasons. And then they come back and give us a better season. But I just wanted to read the article for you guys because I don't really remember this story. I know around season 12, I was in and out of watching Real Housewives of OC. Mainly just, if there was a marathon, I would watch it, but I wasn't watching it regularly. So I don't remember this being a topic of conversation, but clearly it was. But let's get into this review. All right, y'all, so let's get into this episode. So I decided to put majority of the scenes together so I'm not jumping back and forth. So let's start off with Shannon, Gina, Jen, and Tamra in Temecula. So the episode opens up where it left off, where Tamra just threw Gina under the bus because she's now questioning Shannon and saying, they're worried about her and her sobriety, or I don't even know because she's not sober, because it's not like she's abstaining from drinking, but basically worried about her going back to that dark place. And so Gina says, yeah, I did say that, but she was like, Shannon, I want you to understand and know that it was coming from a place of caring, like, because I care about you. She was just like, I'm just worried that you might be slipping back into old patterns. Shannon responds to that by saying, girl, I'm never going back there. And I do appreciate you worrying about me, but I'm good over here. So then Tamra and Gina kind of get into it a little bit. Not really. But Gina basically tells Tamra, girl, the only reason why I said that to you is because I was chastising you for your behavior. Because all last year you were giving her so much shit about drinking. But yet in New Orleans, you decide to run off and sneak off with her to get a drink. And so it flashes back to when they are at like this plant shop, like, botanical gardens type place, and they're buying plants, and Tamra and Gina are there together, and Gina's telling Tamra, I'm worried about Shannon going back to old habits, but I don't appreciate you also like nudging her to do so by sneaking off to have a drink with her in New Orleans. And then Tamra was like, I see where you're coming from. I was just extra happy that me and Shannon were back in a good place. And so I was like, yeah, let's go get a drink, because that's me and Shannon's love language. That's Shannon's love language, to go get a drink and eat and have a good time. But I get where you're coming from. So then the conversation continues with Tamra in her confessional basically saying, no matter what I do, people will always find fault with it. She was like, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. In one regard, I can see what Tamra is saying, because people already don't trust her. So even if she is trying to come from a genuine and sincere place, because she has done all these bad things, nobody is willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. But then on the other hand, it's like, you've done all these bad things, so why are you automatically assuming that people would care for your opinion or ever think you were concerned about them? So then Shannon basically says, I had to crawl myself out of a really dark hole and I'm never going back there. And so then Tamara was like, what can I do to make it better? Like, I messed up. What can I do to make it better? And Shannon was like, I need time. I need time. I need time, girl. And she was like, it's not like I don't appreciate the kind gestures and the things that you have done for me on this trip, Tamara, but I'm just not there. She was like, I had a good time laughing and having a fun time, but like, I need time to get over the things that, or get past what you did. So then Gina says, I think this is a good conversation. She was like, you both are trying your best in this moment, and I think that's the best thing. Jen even speaks up and says, at least we're better than what happened last year. It seems like y'all are in a better place. So then Shannon again says, I really thank you for inviting me on the trip and the kindness that you have given to me. So then Tamara says, I'm grateful that we had this difficult conversation because that is what friends are supposed to do. That's what real friends are supposed to do, is have these types of conversation. So then she says, let's get back to the room or back to the house and let's get into some Shannon nanigans. And so she throws a towel in Shannon's face. And Shannon is like, did you just throw a napkin or a towel in my face? And then Jen said, girl, I'm getting triggered because, season, I think it was 18. No, season 17, she threw a cloth in Jen's face when they were at Nobu's. So she's just like, let's not throw things. They leave the vineyard in a good spot for right now. So the night continues on and they get back to the house. Mind you, Gina is talking about how, like, oh, this is so sexy when they walk into the house because the fireplace is going and things of that nature. And the outside area is really nice with the neon lights in the pool. And Tamara was like, you don't really give me that you get horny like that. And Gina's like, well, I'm really different in the bedroom. And so they start talking about public efforts. And Shannon walks into like the latter half of the conversation or in the middle of the conversation. And she's like, girl, what is a public effort? Like, what is that? I thought that was funny. I'm not even gonna lie, because I feel like Shannon knew what it was, but sometimes Shannon's like kookiness works in her favor. Other time it annoys me, but I got a good chuckle. Not even gonna laugh. I got a good old chuckle. So then we have them wanting to get into the pool. Shannon even said earlier on, like 2 days before this, they show us a flashback that she did not want to wear a bikini. So Tamara got the bright idea to gift all the girls these swim hats that remind me of like the 40s that the women would wear back in the day. Also, she has these like oversized t-shirts that have like bikinis on the front of them, and like you can see the back of it and all of that stuff. So she was like, I thought that would be a fun thing since Shannon really didn't want to wear a bikini. And I thought that was actually like a nice gesture in a sense. Like, you're not feeling great about your body, but hey, we can all wear these outfits so you don't feel out of place. So Shannon is about to go to bed. She laid up in the bed with her shoes on, with her robe on, with her little swim cap on. And Jim walks up in there and she said, girl, you need to wake up. And Shannon's like, girl, I'm getting comfortable. It's late. And so she tells Jen that she has the cap on backwards. And so they're like, start fiddling with it. We then see Gina and Tamara in Gina's room. She ends up pulling out a Dobro blunt. So y'all know at Heather's birthday, they had somebody rolling blunts for people. And so Gina was like, you got to save these types of blunts. They fancy because it's a Heather Dobro. I said, okay, girl. And so she was like, you only pull this one out for special occasions. So then Tamara and Gina have a conversation where Gina basically tells Tamara that she was honestly proud of her in the way that she maneuvered the conversation with Shannon. She also says, like, it was good that you allowed her to speak and you didn't try to overtalk her. Tamara ends up saying, listen, I know I'm no walk in the park. And she was just like, most people think I'm like from New York because I get over things very quickly. And then Gina was like, well, you are somebody that really respects strong people. And when people aren't strong, you kind of pay them no mind. And she was just like, I can tell that in therapy, you're learning that there are different types of people and you have to, give them a chance. And so Tamara ends up making this snarling like face where she was like, have you met me? I don't like all types of people. And so Tamara and Gina laugh. Gina says in her confessional, she was like, I can tell that Tamara wants to change, but she's only been in therapy for like 3 minutes. Like, you gonna have to walk this one through. But we need to give her the space in order to actually show us that she can change. So back with Shannon and Jen, Jen ends up asking Shannon, well, how are you with this whole Tamara situation? And Tamara says, girl, I'm exhausted. It's exhausting to have her do all these things for me and constantly like apologize. It's just a lot. And then Jen says, well, let's just try to have fun. Like, y'all were able to talk things out to a certain extent. Let's just have a good time right now. And she was just like, okay. She also brings up how, Gina even told me that she doesn't tell Tamara her deep, dark secrets. She said Gina likes Tamara, but she don't trust Tamara in that way. And honestly, I don't blame anybody. Tamara does seem like when she is down to have fun, y'all can have like a lot of fun with her. It'll be chaotic, it'll be kooky, it will be a good time. But is Tamara somebody that I think you should like make a friendship with? No, because you can tell that that lady got problems. And hopefully therapy is working for her, but I wouldn't take them chances if I was any of these women. So Tamara and Gina take pictures, and then she's just like, let's have a good time. So we see the girls, in the kitchen plating like a little cute little charcuterie board. Shannon is doing it synchronized. Jen and her are laughing. They end up taking pictures. And even Jen is like, this is what I love about hanging out with Tamara. Is like, we had good times when we were friends. We also got a new confessional from Jen and Gina. And actually, I like these. Okay, this confessional on Jen, she looks great. Okay, hair looks good. The color pink looks good on her skin. I said, come on, Jen. Give us something. Like, give us this. I love it. And so, they're sitting in the hot tub outside, and basically they're like, Shannon, you want to smoke a blunt? And Shannon's like, girl, I got a cough. And Gina was like, how long have you had this cough? She was like, since 2008. And Gina said in her confessional, like, girl, do you have like a black lung? Like, what are you coughing about? So while they're sitting in the hot tub, Gina again reiterates how she's worried about Shannon, but this time to her face. She basically says, after what happened with Matt and the heart attack, and she was like, it just really freaks me out, and I just worry about you. And you could tell that Gina was getting emotional. And I was like, I don't know if Gina is playing this up for the cameras or if she genuinely cares about Shannon. But I'm leaning on to the side that she genuinely cares about Shannon. I think when somebody close to you, especially because Gina's in her 40s, I think she's only like 43, and that's still fairly young. But like when somebody close to you like has a heart attack and you know them to be like very athletic, that freaks you out. So I can understand her now having all these thoughts in her head about like her own mortality and the people around her, their mortality. So she was just like, I just worry about you. She was like, I worry about your future. So then Tamara says in her confessional, she can understand where Gina is coming from because, Shannon drinks a lot. And she was like, Shannon is not young. So it's like, that's very taxing on your body. Shannon ends up saying, I'm aware of my health. She's like, girl, I may look 60, but I got a 28-year-old body. I said, do you, girl? She's like, on the inside, on the inside. And so Gina says in her confessional, she said, honestly, I worry about Shannon because she's an empty nester. All she has at the house is her dog and herself. Her daughters are gone. And she was like, when you get bored, you make really bad decisions sometimes when you're alone. And so Shannon says in her confessional, I'm fine. She's like, I have Archie at the house. I have my TV shows. Currently, I'm doing Sudoku puzzles and timing myself to see how fast I can finish them. I'm doing well. And I think sometimes we forget that people can live alone and not be alone. If Shannon has a community beyond, the show, which I think she does, then her community is who she leans upon. And I learned that early on. When I moved into my first apartment, I was living by myself. And I always stress that I think it's important that everybody lives by themselves at least one time for like at least like 6 months to a year, where you have to learn how to be okay with being alone. Because I feel like sometimes, especially women, romantically and even platonically, you will allow certain people in your life because you don't like being alone. Honestly, everyone. I can't even say just specifically women. I think a lot of people do that, where you will accept the bare minimum from somebody in a relationship, whether it is romantic or platonic, because they're always around and they're keeping you company, even though they bring a lot of stress and strife in your life. So living alone allows you to be okay with just being by yourself, finding things about yourself that you like. And I even learned that I like being by myself most of the time. Like, I have friends that I can call on and hang out with, but like, being by myself is nothing. I love going to the movies by myself. You know, a cute little matinee, especially let it be a movie tavern. I don't know if y'all know what that is, but let me set the scene for you, cuz I don't think we have one here, but where I was living before moving here, we had a movie tavern where you could order actual food, like real food, not that high price crap at AMC. Okay, but actual like hamburgers that they cooked on a real grill, not they microwaved it up in the microwave. Actual like wings, really good wings, and then you could get you an alcoholic beverage. I used to go to the movie tavern that where I was at least twice a month. And I would go during the matinee time, or at least around like 12 to 3, like lunchtime, get me a blueberry lemonade that had vodka in it, okay? Some wings and some fries, or I would get a burger and some fries and just watch my movie by myself and enjoy my own company. So I do think it's important. And you can tell when some people are projecting. And I mean, I get where Gina's coming from to be worried about Shannon, but I'm also like, if Shannon isn't giving you any like red flags that like there's something going on with her, then I say let that lady be happy with her TV shows, her dog, and her Sudoku puzzles. So we switch to the other ladies. Now, mind you, they're also sitting at the table where we left them off at the same restaurant. And they're thanking the waiter. They're like, all the food was wonderful. They also bring up the whole paparazzi situation where like, Heather is like, and now I know all the paparazzi by names. They flash back to when that lady stopped them while they were walking to the restaurant, letting them know that Tamara, Heather did not call the paparazzi. So while they're sitting there, Heather ends up saying, I hope you guys can appreciate my feelings about Tamara. She goes on to say, was I scared of Tamara before? Yes, because she's mean, which Tamara is mean. She also goes on to say, I've had many difficult people in my life. She then starts talking about how she tried to tell Tamara how she felt, where she was like, I tried to tell her a story about my dad. So it flashes back to that episode where it was the last episode we saw Katie, where she had her sit down with Jen. And we see the next time we see Jen sit down with somebody, it's with Heather and with Tamara. Before Jen gets to that restaurant, Heather and Tamara are talking, and Heather's trying to communicate to Tamara, you kind of remind me of my dad a little bit. And she was just like, sometimes he was prone to like public outbursts. Tamara really gets defensive, and she was like, I don't have outbursts in my family in public. Like, basically, girl, don't put that on me. And so Heather ends up telling Gretchen and Emily, like, she shut me down and we never went back to that conversation. She's like, it kind of threw me off that she didn't want to communicate with me about this. So then Gretchen ends up asking um Heather, well, do you mind sharing more information about your father? And Heather was like, oh, no, no, like, I'm fine with that. So she explains that her dad passed away a few years ago. And she was like, he was prone to like blowing up. Like, that's just what we knew him as. And she also says like those situations would make me and my sister uncomfortable because it oftentimes happened in public. She says in the confessional that like it would just be at random. Like, my dad would just explode. And they actually show us pictures of her father. His name is Conrad. And she was like, it was embarrassing, it was disturbing, and it was unsettling. And it always happened most of the time in public. And she was like, I was just trying to show Tamara that her behavior that other day. And Emily chimes in and she was like, it made you uncomfortable. And she was like, yes, it made me uncomfortable. That was what I was trying to say. So then Heather says in her confessional, she was like, Tamara can be a like very volatile, and she was like, and you don't really know what you're gonna get with her, so it is sometimes uncomfortable. And she was like, what I was trying to say is that's how I felt with my dad, and I do understand that it has a certain effect on me, on the way that I am. And it does, because you can tell that Heather is very much of like a control freak in a sense. Like, everything has its place, and I think in her mind, if I can control this environment, that means that there will be a smaller chance of an outburst happening. But it's also kind of crazy that she would join Real Housewives of Orange County when you have a Tamara, a Vicky, a Shannon, Kelly Dodd, Bronwyn, you know, people who have outbursts and freak out and have these Tamara, these crazy moments. But maybe she's like, that's something, it's the show. That's not something I have to deal with constantly in my life. Maybe that's how she like separates it in her brain. So then Emily chimes in and she was like, you can't put expectations on someone who can't really live up to those expectations. And in the confessional, Emily basically said she thinks it's difficult for Tamra to have real friendships. She was like, Tamra is always ready to argue with somebody. You know, she also says that she's always like strategizing. And in Tamra's mind, she's always playing like chess. Like it's a how do I one up this person? It's never how do I understand this person? It's just how do I get them before they get me? And that's a scary state to live in, is if you constantly think somebody is out to get you. Girl, that's paranoia and you need to go see somebody. Also, I'm wondering if Heather's dad was like neurodivergent, like there was something mentally wrong with him, because she doesn't allude to like alcoholism or anything of that nature or substance abuse of any kind. And so I'm just like, maybe he, when he got overwhelmed, he blew up. And for some people who have autism or other forms of neurodivergency, that happens. But back in that day, I don't think anybody wanted to get slapped with that label, especially when you learn about how they treated people who had like mental disabilities. Like that's why I don't like like horror movies about like asylums, because when you read about it, it is so like it's depressing to know that people, it's so they were doing some of the most inhuman and barbaric things to these people. And most of the times all these people needed was maybe some medication to regulate their hormones, somebody to talk to them on a consistent basis, like therapy once or twice a week, in a positive environment. But they did not give them people that. They were lobotomizing people, shock therapy, doing things like that. And it makes me so uncomfortable when I see people like do Halloween themes like that. And I enjoy Halloween, one of my favorite holidays, but I start to automatically think about and that's why people use asylums for like ghost hunts or for movies, because they were doing some dark, I mean some sinister stuff to them people. Like horrible stuff to them people. So I could understand why nobody back then would want to be labeled as that, because he probably did have something wrong with him like mentally, because you just exploding left and right, and it's not because you an alcoholic or you on drugs. Something wrong with you. So then Gretchen chimes into this conversation and she like, thanks Heather for sharing. And she was like, psychologically, the reason why you choose to be friends with Tamara is because maybe you're trying to heal a part of yourself that, you couldn't heal with your dad around. And that's why you always give her chances. So then Heather actually starts to get like a little emotional, where she talks about her children, where she was like, I think that's why I parent the way I do, where I'm like, you can't control who you come from, but you can control like where you go and the environment that you're in. And so she was like, that's why I want my kids to feel safe with me. So basically, Gretchen says in her confessional that she likes the fact that Heather opened up to her, because she was just like, Heather should do this more because it would give people a chance to actually get to know her. And I think this was actually nice of Heather to do, because it does give, it humanizes her. Even though Heather is my favorite on this show and one of my favorite housewives ever, I do know that a lot of people see her as like robotic and very like, not real. So actually finding out and hearing like her part of her story, I saw a lot of people on like Instagram and Twitter saying like, oh wow, this really like humanized Heather to me, and it actually made me sympathize with her. So she should try, if she stays on the show as seasons go on, to share more pieces about her life, or maybe she's waiting, because I don't know if I think Heather's mom is still around, because some people won't talk poorly about a parent, especially if their parents were still together, until like both of them are gone. Then they feel like free to say whatever they need to say, So Heather's like, y'all know y'all ready to go out, and they're like, yeah, where you want to go? And I think Gretchen said, let's go to the Abbey. Mind you, the Abbey is a gay club. Okay, I don't live in California. I've been there maybe. I think I've been there twice, but I've been to San Diego. Yeah, I've been to San Diego. So, but I do know, watching these shows like Vanderpump Rules and all these shows of like in California, and even because I watch RuPaul's Drag Race and some of the contestants are from California and they talk about performing at the Abbey, that I was just so confused why Gretchen wanted to go there, because you are a staunch red hat gang supporter and you have like so many like homophobic things online that it's the weird disconnect for homophobic people to want to be around gay people and in their safe spaces, yet you are voting to get rid of them, to eradicate them. That is crazy to me. And she was the one that was like, yeah, let's go to the Abbey. I've been there before. What? So we actually see them go to the Abbey. But before we get into that, Emily dumps out her purse. She has like, the personal like little shot bottles of Fireball, but she also has gummy worms. Emily is trying too hard to be the comedic relief. And we've already talked about this ad nauseum in all my other videos about Emily and like her issues with her body and the way that she tries to be like the fat girl, but yet wants to cry when she realizes she's not as skinny as the other women. Or the self-deprecating jokes, just they don't do it for me, and making yourself the brunt of a joke also doesn't help either. So like I said, we see the girls go to the Abbey and they have a good time. The male dancers, like one of them was picking Emily up, they was flipping her, dipping her, and doing her. And Heather was like, I wanted to go to the Abbey so we could have a good time. She was like, not like what happened when we celebrated Tamra's, her bachelorette party when we went to Mexico and they was trying to, do her in the ear. Like, like, she was like, no, 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 no. This is clean fun. But Emily was having a good old time. I mean, she was turned up. Gretchen was drinking a whole lot. They was dancing. It was a lot. I said, okay, girl. Even Gretchen was like, I used to be a pole dancer back in my day. I kicked a couple of strippers off the stage. So then Heather was like, I thought we were just having fun, but not girls going wild, because you end up seeing Gretchen straddle Emily. I said, y'all are doing a lot. Y'all are doing a lot. So then Emily says, I like this Gretchers, the one that drinks a little bit. I like her way better than the one that's praying online and making content. I want this Gretchen all the time. And they actually saw Gretchen doing like an Instagram video saying, Jesus loves you. I said, okay. Okay, so then you see Emily end up calling her husband Shane and the boys and all of that stuff. They say hi to them and keep it pushing. Emily is going to keep pelling to us that she has to live a life too, even though it's stressing her out about her son's ED situation. And we get it, girl. Let it go. Let it go, Emily, So while they're in the car, Gretchen, you can tell is drunk, is telling Heather, can we go to a karaoke? Like, girl, we need to find a karaoke bar and turn up. And I wonder if they have my songs. They flash back to when Gretchen thought she was a singer in the studio talking about, I'll break free. You're never gonna break me or break me. I said, okay. Okay. And she was like, I have 4 songs. All right. And so Emily was like, you have 4 songs and Tamara never played them songs for us. And so Gretchen was like, Tamara tried to bring a singer too, but she sounded really bad. Like there's audio of her in the studio singing and it's horrible. And so then, what's her name? So then Emily was like, are you serious? Are you serious? She was like, yeah, girl. She tried to sing and it's not good. So now Emily is like, you can tell the wheels in Emily's head are turning, because she was like, oh, this is some good tea. Like, this is about to be messy. Because she's like, oh, for real? So she's like, yeah. So then when they're in the car, I think one of them is like, who did she make the music with? Gretchen said somebody by the name of so-and-so. They bleep it out. And she was like, oh, yeah, she banged him. Heather is gagged. Heather's like, what do you mean? She was like, yeah. So Heather's in her confessional saying, I personally don't know who this singer is that she's referencing as to who Tamara messed around with. You have Emily saying, I'm a Gen Xer, so of course I know who she's talking about. And so Heather is like, did she do this before she got married or while she was married? And she was like, Gretchen was like, while. And Heather's like, oh, that's bad. That's real bad. Like, you could tell that Heather was like, I don't think we should be talking about this. Okay. So they get back to the penthouse. We see Nate, the sleepover butler. Heather ends up finally showing the girls their beds with the canopies, and they have embroidered like pajamas with their names, sleep mask, and everything. Gretchen is lit. Like, she is like, oh my gosh, this is so fabulous. Emily says she feels like a shitty mom because she was like, Annabelle had a sleepover. The girls all slept in my living room together and watched a movie and ate pizza and popcorn. Heather Dubrow buys new beds and gives us canopies. Mind you, the whole entire sleepover cost $15,000. I said, Heather, you want to throw me a sleepover? Do you want to throw me a sleepover, ma'am? So, like I said, Gretchen is drunk, but she is living her best life. She is in Heather's furs. They're tearing up one of her rooms, one of Heather's rooms, where they're throwing pillows at each other. Heather comes in the room and she's just like, okay, this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. They messing up my pillows. Like, this, it's okay. Let me just breathe. Heather walks into the room and she is like, y'all need to get out of here. I need y'all to get out of this room. So they go into the kitchen and they have pizza. There's whip shots. Mind you, I need to get some whip shots. I've heard so many positive things about them and I've always wanted to try them, but every time I go on the website to order, they're always sold out. But I'm going to see if I can get them, especially in time for Christmas, because there's like a holiday drink that I want to make that has whipped cream. And I think it would be, really good with the whip shots. So they sit down at the kitchen counter to, have a fun time and talk. And Emily really wants to hear the audio of Tamra singing. So she tells Gretchen, girl, go find your phone. Go find your phone. Gretchen is drunkenly like sifting through trying to find her phone. And then she finally finds it and they end up calling Slade. And so Emily takes Gretchen's phone and she's just like, I want to hear this audio of Tamra singing. Like, I'm really interested in this audio. And how did you like come upon this audio? So Slade says, the story goes that Tamra ended up, hooking up with the guy that she was recording the song with in the studio. They didn't know that the recording devices were still on and it caught them hooking up. So Gretchen is gagged. Like, she can't believe that Slade said that he heard that audio of them hooking up, and Heather is gagged as well. And Emily is like, so you heard the audio? And Slade is like, yeah, I heard the audio. That's what I heard. It was played for me. And I do agree with Emily that Slade salivates at the moment to talk badly about Tamra instead of just being a husband or telling Gretchen to move on from this situation. Because she even says, if Shane saw me doing something like this, he would just tell me, girl, shut up about Tamra and move on. But Slade just feeds Gretchen and feeds her like, what's the word, her resentment and her anger towards Tamra. So we actually get a confessional of Slade where he basically says, when it comes to Tamra, I'm normally not interested in talking about her, but I'm always interested in telling the truth. I said, this makes you look bad. It does. So then Gretchen ends up saying, you guys can't tell Tamra, okay, because it's going to be a big problem for me. I just don't need you guys telling Tamra. So then Gretchen in her confessional is like, I don't want the girls running back and telling Tamra anything. I'm not the one that said that I had the audio of her doing something in the studio. I just wanted to play her singing the original audio. Slade's the one that said he heard her, engaging in those acts. So they jump into their canopy beds. And Gretchen is like really nervous about being in trouble with Tamra. And Heather and Emily are like, Gretchen, you are going to be in so much trouble. And my thing about it is with Gretchen is like, girl, I mean, you were drunk, and I think everyone's drunkenness, like, it's different. I just know, like, I've only been blacked out drunk maybe 2 or 3 times. Other times when I'm drunk, most of the times I have control of like my faculties. Like, there's never been a point when I was that drunk where I would tell somebody's business that I was afraid of like the repercussions. Like, so I'm just looking at her like, girl, were you that drunk? Or was this a plot or a scheme to bring this story back to the show? Either way, you being this scary about getting in trouble with Tamra is wild to me. So it's the next day for both groups. We actually see Heather's group first, where they're waking up out of their canopy beds. Heather is, pulling up the blinds, and you get this beautiful view of, Beverly Hills. And then they're arguing, trying to figure out like if they can really see the ocean. Production confirms that yes, you can see the ocean from Heather's apartment. So they're gonna get their breakfast done by a private chef. And then we go to Temecula with the rest of the women, and Shannon is the one making breakfast. So she's making these like cauliflower fritters, and I was like, ew, girl, just give me some potato fritters. And here's the thing, I've tried cauliflower. I even tried to eat cauliflower pizza when I was really on a health kick, and it just left a bad aftertaste in my mouth. It's just not something that I like to eat. And I like eating certain vegetables. Like I love broccoli, corn, um, sometimes I like my carrots grilled. I even somewhat like asparagus, and I do love me a good Brussels sprouts. Some nice charred Brussels sprouts are good. But cauliflower just tastes gross to me. So I was just like, I wouldn't have ate that. But the girls are like, no, it smells really good. We see Tamara enter the kitchen first. She has this hat on her head that was like, I don't cook, but I do like to stir in the pot. Shannon sees it and she's like, okay. like she's annoyed by it. The rest of the women come into the kitchen and they're like, oh, it smells great. Tamara is trying to have a conversation with Shannon as she's trying to prepare breakfast, and you can tell that Shannon is very like one track mind when it comes to doing certain things, because she's talking to Tamara but like more so focused in her I think it was, what was it, her Mac, because that's where she has the instructions on how to make the breakfast. And so Tamara is like asking her, how do you like your house, your new house, are you ever going to invite me? And Shannon was like, it's fine, it's like, five houses down from my old house. Then Tamara's like, oh, are you going to go golfing? And you could tell that Shannon is trying to talk to her, but her mind is very much like, I'm trying to make breakfast. And Jen had the perfect analogy in her confessional where she was like, Tamara is definitely trying to like interact with Shannon and really talk to her, but Shannon is like a girl who is getting hit on by a dude that she's not interested in. Like, just leave her alone, because Shannon is not interested. And I'm looking at Tamara like, clearly you can tell, because Tamara even says, oh, you're like like Eddie, he's an Aries too, he can't talk to me when he is cooking. And I'm like, if you can pick up on that, then leave her alone and then try to have a conversation with her once she's done cooking. So then you have Gina saying, I wonder how long Emily can endure fancy pantsness before she blows up. And that's another way of showing that they don't really like Heather. Because even Tamara was laughing at it, but Heather's supposed to be your friend. Because she was the only person that actually showed that she cared about you when you ran out of New Orleans. Again, I will say Gina and Emily do not like Heather. So back at Heather's place, like I said, they have a private chef cooking. And we see Gretchen in the confessional saying, I'm a little hungover. I'm not even going to lie about that. It was a fun night, but it was a lot for me. So we go back to the people in Temecula, and Jen ends up asking Gina, like, hey, do you think you'll ever get married? And Gina's like, you know what? I don't really know. I don't know. But it's the whole situation with Travis and his ex. Like, we're more focused about like protecting our family and bracing ourselves with what is next. Gina is getting emotional where she's like, I feel like she's punishing him by keeping her son away because we moved in together. And, he is trying his best to like navigate this situation. She starts to get emotional in the confessional as well, where she's like, Travis has a very important court date coming up where he is actually looking to get full custody of his son. So on the ride to Temecula the previous day, we actually see Gina explaining to the ladies in the car that like, she's withholding the stepson, or really, Travis's son, away from them. And she was like, it's all because we moved in together. But Travis is trying to get full custody at the next court hearing. And she's just like, I don't understand why she's doing all of this. And he's not really a bad guy. Like he's a good person. And she's just like, it's just a horrible situation. And she's just like, I can't take it. She also says it's really hard to picture a life with somebody when you're living with this type of situation. My thing about it is, again, I want to know what really is tea with the ex-wife, or his soon to be ex-wife. Like, why she, like, and how is she able to withhold the son from you if she don't have like primary custody? Why haven't we called, the police? Because I know for a fact, if I haven't seen my child in like 3 weeks, and like my husband or my soon to be ex-husband, or my baby daddy, whatever, because I don't know what's gonna happen to me in a couple of years. Hopefully we're married with kids. Well, I don't know about the kids part. Maybe married, life partners, something like that. But I'm just saying, like, if I had a baby and somebody was withholding them from me, I'm police and I'm beating your ass. Like, I'm just confused as to how she's able to do that, and they haven't called the police on her, because you shouldn't be able to do that, especially if they don't have any evidence to prove that, and Travis isn't doing anything to harm the son. I don't get why we haven't contacted the authorities or the courts to be like, this is what she's doing. And Gina says she's purposely doing this to basically make it seem like he's scared to be around us. So she's just like, she doesn't really know about marrying Travis, but she knows she loves him. So we go back to Heather's place and we see the food set up. I would have devoured those croissants. They zoomed in on one of them croissants and it looked delicious. So we see the private chef, Chris, comes out, and you could tell he was annoyed with Gretchen and Emily's like offer, where I think Emily said something to the effect that she wanted her eggs like cooked really, really hard. And then Gretchen said something similar to that. And he kind of like sighed, like, for real. But then Heather says, like, girl, he's a private chef. He'll do what you need. No, what's her name? Gretchen said she wanted her eggs poached. Okay. And Heather was like, girl, he's a private chef. Get it how you want it. Okay, I'm paying him for that. We then see Terry come upstairs and he's like saying hi to all of them. And Heather's like, did you miss me not sleeping in the bed with you? And he's like, no, I got the best sleep of my life. So currently they're trying to like divorce rooms. So basically, still be together but sleeping in different rooms. And I've been hearing about that a lot, where a lot of couples are now, especially like younger couples, are now getting like 3-bedroom apartments where you get your own room, your own bathroom, and then they have like, an office space that they share, or like a game room, and then, like the living area and everything. But a lot of people have said it's actually been very like successful for multiple couples to not share a bedroom together or a bed together. Like, you can sleep with your partner whenever and they can sleep with you whenever, but having the option of like being in a different room has helped cut down on arguments. And I've thought about that because I did see this really cool room, but the problem is with me is like, if we're gonna do that, I'm still gonna decorate your room, because you're not gonna have a janky room in my house. Like, you can have your own room, but I'm gonna decorate it because it's not gonna mess up the flow of my place. But I don't think that's a bad thing. So then Gretchen is like, oh really? Like, me and Slade are thinking about sleeping in separate rooms as well, because he snores so much. And she was like, I always have to kick him out and like have him sleep on the couch. Now, this conversation with the four of them was very interesting, because Emily starts off by saying, like, do you ever think you're going to get married, Gretchen? And Gretchen is like, So basically, Gretchen said that, yeah, she doesn't mind marrying Slade, but, they're kind of cool with where things are at right now. Heather chimes in and was like, well, when we talked about this years ago about you guys getting married, you said that you wanted him to financially figure his stuff out before you guys tied the knot. And they flash back to 2012 where they had this conversation. And pretty much Gretchen is saying, Slade needs to resolve his financial issues before we get together. So then Heather is like, I'm assuming all of that stuff is handled. And she was like, I feel like all of that stuff is handled right. And she was like, yeah, no, it's not even that. Like, all of that did get handled, but we're cool with what it is for right now. So in the confessional, what's her name? Gretchen says, they tell everybody that her and Slade are husband and wife. And she was like, we got married. I think she said by like some they had like a wedding ceremony, but they didn't file the paperwork. I said, okay, girl. So then I think it was Heather that asked, or Emily that asked, like, do you know? I think it was Emily. She was like, so do you guys like share bank accounts together? She was like, is everything like financially separated? And she was like, everything is in my name. Gretchen was like, I like owning my own money. She was like, I never wanted to be taken advantage of or be controlled by a man financially. And that's a smart thing, girl. I always told myself if I, did get married, that we would have like a joint bank account where, we put some of our paychecks into there so we can pay the bills and things of that nature. But you have your own separate accounts. Okay. Okay. You separate that money. All right. And so Emily is like, so do he like help pay the mortgage? Like, does he pay you rent? And then Gretchen is like, pay me rent. And she's like, well, yeah, girl, like you not giving us much information. Y'all not sharing bank accounts. It don't seem like the man have a job. So what's going on? So then Heather chimes in and she was like, so what about when y'all like do groceries? Does he do this? Do you do that? And then Gretchen ends up saying, well, I don't know. It comes out of my account. Girl, Gretchen is over there taking care of that they child and that man. Because what do you mean you don't know? Like it sounds like that Slade don't contribute shit to that household. Like, and that's crazy because they've been together for like 16 years. And you telling me for 16 years you have been taking care of this grown man? And also, I'm trying to figure out, how does Gretchen make money? Like, what does she do? Because it's not like she's a reality star, because she's not like, she's not a Phaedra. Like, Phaedra was popping up on reality shows like the Braxtons, and I saw her on like competition shows. She was on Traders. Like, I'm just like, what does Gretchen do in order to take care of her? Maybe she gets endorsements because she is an influencer technically online. Maybe that's how she take care of her family. But that's crazy. Crazy. And so even Heather is in her confessional being like, honestly, Gretchen and Slade's financial situation never really made sense to me. Like, that's why when Gretchen proposed to Slade, it was weird. And they show when she proposed to him back in 2013. When I tell you, I do not believe too fully into gender roles. But that one right there, I would rather have my body covered in paper cuts and bathe in lemon juice before I ever get on one knee to propose to a man. If you see a video of me doing that, it's AI, or I'm being held against my will and I've been kidnapped. Like, call the authorities, because no ma'am. No ma'am. And then him getting down on one knee talking about, I'm so honored. No ma'am. So then Heather's in the confessional being like, so I don't really understand why they haven't gotten married yet, or why she refuses to put anything in his name. She was like, it's giving, girl, it's giving he bad with the finances. Okay. So then Heather ends up saying, I think it's just kind of different for us because all of our stuff is like co-mingled together. And then Emily says the same thing. She was like, when me and Shane got together, we got a joint bank account. And she was like, and girl, I ain't signed no prenup. She was like, what? And then Emily's in her confessional being like, what does Slade do? Like, he has a crooked penis. Like, what is he doing? So then Gretchen ends up saying that, like, this is like an uncomfortable conversation for her. But I'm like, what did you expect? Like, when people haven't seen you on this show since like season 8, we're in season 19. Of course you were going to be questioned about your relationship with Slade. On top of that, you guys have been together for like 16 years and y'all haven't been married. Like, but you're telling people that y'all are married. That's wild to a lot of people. So then the last scene we have from Heather's group is them getting like chair massages, which I need to get one because they always look very comfortable at the mall. While they're sitting there, they start talking about, the audio recording of Tamra. Gretchen is trying to feign like ignorance and trying to act like, oh, she made a mistake. She says, somebody asked me something about a pop song. And Emily was like, yeah, we asked you about a pop song and you told us the girl had an affair with so and so. And so Gretchen is like, you guys need to stop. Like, I didn't do anything. And then Heather's like, girl, you told us about this information. Like, what are you talking about? And so Gretchen is like, no, I didn't. Slade was the one that brought it up. That doesn't matter, girl. Like, what are you talking about? So then Heather says in her confessional, after this many years, has he not learned, like basically Slade, has he not learned not to get involved in this type of drama? Mind you, Slade was Peter Thomas before Peter Thomas was Peter Thomas. Like, so Slade loves being in women's drama, women's mess. He loves stirring the pot. And plus, he does not like Tamra. He felt like Tamra made his life a living hell, so he's trying to do the same. It's stupid, but he's trying to do the same. So then Gretchen is just like, don't tell her because that's going to cause issues. And it's not nice if you guys do that. So she's in the confessional saying, like, what happens at a sleepover should stay at a sleepover. And she was just like, I just feel like this situation is just crazy. But then Emily ends up saying, how are you making us the villains of this situation when you're the one that brought this information to us? And then Gretchen is like, I just don't want the women to be assholes and run back to Tamra and tell her this information. And I think someone said, girl, we didn't manipulate you to get this information. I think it was Heather. I think Heather was like, we didn't manipulate you to get this information. You just told us. And so in the confessional, Heather's like, girl, she backpedaling, just backpedaling. And so then Emily says, Tamra is a horrible person, as you say, Gretchen, yet you're upset because she accused you of an affair, you even sued somebody for that information, and now you're doing the same. Like, are you sure you guys aren't the same person? And Gretchen is like, I'm totally different. But then she also brings up that, like, I found this information out on the internet, just like she told me she found the information out on the internet. So we're not the same. But then in the confessional, Gretchen is like, I'm giving Tamra the same energy she's giving me, which I will say it's fair. I will say, in a sense, it is fair to do, like, reciprocate that energy. My issue is with Gretchen is she's trying to make it seem like Emily and Heather like set her up, where it's like, no, you're the one that brought up the pop song, you're the one that called Slade, and Slade's the one that gave that information. All Slade had to do was say, like, oh yeah, I heard the song, it's pretty bad. And he didn't have to add the extra part about allegedly her sleeping with some man and them recording it. He wanted to be messy, so now in turn you have to try to defend yourself, but that's your fault. And like I said, I don't know if this is a plot, but it is giving a plot, because Vicky did say during Ultimate Girls Trip Morocco, Slade was calling Gretchen to try to cook up storylines for production. So I could see them doing this, but I also say it's fair because Tamra did the same thing. She brought up that Slade was a deadbeat and pointed her references to articles that she saw online. And there's articles about Tamra in this situation as well. So it's like, you won for one. But I just think it was stupid on Gretchen and Slade's part, because you can't be saying like, oh my gosh, like, we're a victim of Tamra's abuse and things of that nature, yet you're doing the same thing. And it reminds me of what Heather said earlier in the season, where she was like, Tamra and Gretchen are always going at each other so harshly that they don't see how they contribute to this relationship. And I think Gretchen is so like stuck in her victimhood that she does not realize that you just made a grave error of bringing something back up like this. And now it's like, girl, you already had a situation where you were mad at Katie for spreading a rumor, and now you're doing the same thing. It makes you look hypocritical, and people are already looking at you funny, and now you're giving them a further reason to look at you funny and to side with Tamara and Katie and deem you and your husband, well, no, he's not your husband, your boyfriend, as liars. So the last scene we have is the ladies in Temecula. They're outside eating breakfast, the breakfast that Shannon made for them. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is great. So then someone was like, so what are y'all doing when y'all get back home? I think Gina says, it's open house and all of that stuff. So she has to go, to the schools with her kids. Then Shannon is like, I promised Archie a long walk. So we're going walking. She was like, I always do that. When I leave, I explain to him what I'm going to do and how like I'm going to be like where I'm going to be and all that stuff and what's going to happen when I get back. And so she was like, yeah, I can't wait to go home and see him. So then Jen ends up saying, it makes me sad to think of my friend home at home lonely. She was like, I do worry about Shannon as well. So then she ends up asking Shannon, what happens when you get worked up and then you get so worked up that it kind of like it derails into something else, and they flash back to when Shannon kind of started spiraling at the table when the episode first opened up and things of that nature. And Shannon says, I talked to my therapist about this. We talk a lot about catastrophizing, and that's one of the unhealthy models of thinking. I know I do this thing called fortune telling where I try to guess what's going to happen and then I stress about what's going to happen, even though I don't know what's going to happen. But it's a part of this unhealthy mindset. I think there's like 12 or maybe 8 different mindsets, and catastrophizing is one of them, where it's like you immediately go to the negative and you blow up the situation and make it worse than what it already seems as, and it causes people to spiral the way that Shannon does. So she was like, yeah, we talk about it all the time in therapy. So Jen is just like, how do you stop that from happening? And like, where does that come from? And says, like the other day when it happened, I just, it happens from day to day. Sometimes I'm able to manage it, sometimes I'm not. But she was like, as a child, I grew up in a bit of chaos. And so Tamara jumps in and she was like, yeah, we talked about that stuff before. She was like, I remember when my mom told us that she was divorcing my dad, and they show flashbacks of Shannon where she was like, I had come home from college, and I guess the people that are supposed to like serve her father, they didn't do it in time. And so he comes home not knowing what's going on. And, we end up having a barbecue, playing tennis as a family. And she said the whole entire time we're doing this, I felt bad because all of us know that my mom is about to divorce this man or serve him the papers, and he doesn't know. And so Shannon's getting emotional. And then Tamara jumps in and she says something about like, well, didn't you tell me that your dad was an alcoholic? That pisses Shannon off. And she's like, you know what, Tamara, I don't need your help telling my own story. My dad is 96 years old, and I don't think it's fair for you to bring that up. And he's a different man right now. Like he's a different man that he is in his life. Like, so don't do that. I'm not trying to hurt my father by talking about these things. And then Tamara's like, I'm not trying to hurt your father either. And so then Shannon ends up saying, I've talked to Tamara about my upbringing and things of that nature. And for her to bring up a private conversation on camera like this, like, how dare you? Like, how dare you do that to me, bro? And here's the thing about this situation. I got what Tamara was trying to say. She was trying to give credence to what Shannon was saying. That, like, yeah, like I get you being upset with your mom, but like your dad was an alcoholic. So like maybe you should give yourself grace and give yourself the understanding of like, yes, it was a crappy situation, but you also understood what your mom was going through. Like maybe you should give grace to your mom. But it also is just like, Tamara, this is not your time to speak. Like y'all are not in a good place. Y'all are barely even really talking to each other. What Tamara was trying to do, because she ends up telling Shannon like, I'm not trying to hurt your dad, like I was trying to help. That's all I'm trying to do, Shannon. Like I'm just saying that like I understand you grew up with some struggles. And then Shannon is like, look, I don't want to hear it from you. So then Gina ends up jumping in and she was like, Shannon, I don't think she was trying to hurt you. I think Tamara was really trying to just be there for you. And Gina even says in her confessional, I think Tamara was genuinely trying to connect to Shannon. I don't think she was trying to pout on her. So then Tamara then continues on by saying, when you bury this stuff, it comes out. And so then that just sends Shannon over, where she was like, I know this stuff is buried, Tamara. I don't need you trying to tell me about myself. Okay, I'm getting help. I don't need you telling me this. So then Tamara gets frustrated and she was like, you know what, F it. And she walks into the house and she was like, I'm trying to give my 2 cents, trying to help. And so then Shannon says in her confession, like, I'm trying to explain, like, what's going on and how I may be showing up this way. I don't need her explaining therapy to me. I know what therapy is. So then Tamara's in the kitchen calling Shannon an annoying bitch, saying she need to take another drink, go drink some more. Like, just throwing digs because she feels some type of way that Shannon rejected her kindness because she was trying to be there for her. And I got where Tamara was coming from, but it's like, also, girl, I totally get where Shannon's coming from. We're not in a good place. I don't need you trying to talk to me about things that are very traumatic for me. Then you bring up this information about my daddy being an alcoholic, something that I've never shared on the show. Like, girl, what? And you can see Tamara really wants to connect with Shannon, but the fact that Shannon is stopping her at every turn is really bothering her. Because the fact that she immediately went to like throwing digs at Shannon just lets me know that it really hurts you because you thought you were really connecting with her. Granted, we know Tamara is a gutter snipe and she is mean, but I also can see that she is someone that is desperately trying to connect to people and wants to be loved. But she doesn't understand that, like, girl, it's so much water under the bridge that the bridge is not there. Like, you need to let some of that water evaporate and recede before you start trying to give out like help and advice to people. So then Jen ends up telling Gina, I disagree about Tamara trying to help. She's like, to bring up a statement about her dad like that, that's kind of messed up. And so Gina ends up saying, I get it. I get it. So then Jen is like, you know what? I'm gonna go check up on Tamara. And so in her confessional, Jen ends up saying in the confessional that, like, throwing out there that Shannon's dad was an alcoholic, it's like Tamara wants you to connect the dots that, like, oh, maybe Shannon really does have a drinking problem and that's why she shows up in this way. And she was like, you're trying to say Shannon is an alcoholic without saying she's an alcoholic, to be like it runs in the family. So Jen is just like, hey, when she goes into the not confessional, but when she goes into the kitchen, she was like, did you really mean the comment about the dad? Was it a dig or were you really trying to help? And Tamara's like, no, I was really trying to help. And that's why I feel like Tamara was trying to help, but she just is like, girl, you've done so much dirty things to this lady. She don't want your help. And the thing is, like, I fault Tamara, but not too much, in the sense of she's so used to being able to do this to Shannon and Shannon always accepting her that it is like really frying her brain that Shannon is holding her ground for once and she doesn't know how to get her to be back in a like fun spot with her anymore. And I really think that's what Tamara is struggling with. So Jen is like, well, you know what? You extended an olive branch, just call it a day. So then Gina outside is telling Shannon, I think it's good that you're speaking up for yourself and telling her how you feel in the moment instead of waiting and not going backwards and things of that nature. And Shannon was like, I've been in a good place and I want to stay in that good place. And I'm trying to stay firm on my boundaries. Not speaking to her for a while has really been good for me. And Gina basically tells Shannon, she has to learn your boundaries. Like, Tamara has to learn your boundaries, but you have to hold on to it. Gina has a good confessional. We get a new confessional. I said, oh my God, Gina, whoever did this glam, girl, you look good. You look great. The hair looks great. The dress, it's giving the girl from The Notebook. It's giving that she could be a character in The Notebook. I said, come on, Gina. So Gina says in her confessional that she believes time heals all wounds, but she also believes that the wounds end up healing wonky. Sometimes you need surgery on them, and sometimes you need to reopen them to heal them more. But she was like, I think we are moving forward in a positive place with Shannon and Tamara, because at least they're talking to each other. So back in the kitchen, I think someone is like, I know we had a little bumpy moment outside, but we need to, this is okay. This where we're at is okay. So then Tamara ends up saying, I had good intentions, but at this point, I'm just kind of out of it. Like, she's like, I'm ready to go. She was like, at this point, Shannon's going to always find fault with what I do, no matter if it's coming from a good place or not. So then Jen ends up telling Shannon in the kitchen, I asked her about the dad comment and she said it wasn't a dig. And Shannon said, of course she going to say it wasn't a dig. She was like, I just should have listened to my therapist. Like, I told my therapist that I didn't want to come. I just shouldn't have come. And so she's just like, I can't do it anymore. And she was like, Shannon says in her confessional, I just don't believe Tamara anymore. I don't believe that she's capable of changing or that she means what she says. So then Gina is just like, this is crazy. Like, both these women are like 161, the other one is 57, and they're acting like middle school girls. And I just like, I'm over them fighting. So yeah, y'all, that is it. That is all. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in the comments below, subscribe, and like the video. And I'm out, y'all. Deuces.